and our closing speaker today, Scott Birkin. This is condensed. I could probably have like 2 pages for this. Based in Seattle, Washington, born and raised in Queens, New York, design leader, best-selling author, popular speaker on UX design, innovation, leading teams, public speaking, book giveaways, and other subjects. He has published 9 books. 9? Probably have a 10th before the talk is over. How Design Makes the World, The Myths of Innovation, Confessions of a Public Speaker, and The Year Without Pants. Probably one of my favorite titles. He was a co-host of CNBC's The Business of Innovation TV show. His work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, Economist, Guardian, Wired Magazine, USA Today, Fast Company, National Public Radio, CNN, NPR, MSNBC, and other media. You can find him online at scottbirkin.com. And he has appeared as an expert on various subjects on many of those same places I just mentioned. He's an MC and speaker coach for Ignite Seattle, and he directed the short film We Make Seattle. Today, he's here to talk about why design is hard and what to do about it. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Birkin.
Thank you, sir. Hello, how are you doing? People in the front row, free stuff good. Free stuff good. You want to take bribes, that's good, since I think a lot of you work in government, is that correct? Good to know, good to know. So why is design hard? I think when you all saw the title of this talk, you probably had something pop into your mind of your own experience in the world trying to make things. And as a person who has some design skill, I'm an author, I know the first thing people are going to experience about a book is the cover, most likely. And if you look at the cover, it's trying to capture something that often goes uncaptured about being a person who works with ideas. When you work with an idea on your own, in your own time, in your own space, you don't have to deal with these collisions with other people. But once you start pitching an idea, sharing an idea, trying to persuade someone, making a proposal, we have to contend with the world. And what's reflected in the cover is that experience is often really frustrating when people who don't have your expertise or knowledge are commenting and critiquing what you're doing. And what I'm going to share with you today is a thesis about how we can be more effective at getting the world that we want by stopping avoiding these things that we'd rather not have part of the design process and accepting them and trying to contend with them using the superpowers we have as designers. And to do this, I want to start with a story about a terrible thing that happened a few years ago. This is the Notre Dame Cathedral fire. It goes back before the pandemic, so this may feel like this was in the land before time, a million years ago. It's only about 6 years ago. So you're probably familiar with the story. It's bringing back a memory of the news and that dramatic moment when the spire, this beautiful spire of one of the most beloved buildings in the world, crashed and fell through the cathedral itself. But I'm here to tell you that at the heart of the story is a story about user experience design and design failure, and we can learn from it. So in this story, there is a character that plays a key role that looks like this. ZDA 110-3-15-1. Now, does anyone here know what this is? Is this familiar to anyone here? Robot firefighter. Do you work in the fire industry? No. No. Did you work at the cathedral? No. I bribed you with a book, and you still. So no one should know what this is unless you are really, really specialized in knowledge. So he's on the right track. As the story of this fire goes, there was a fire alarm system that had been installed several years earlier in this massive cathedral that had to be protected because it's historic. And they built this elaborate system. And part of the system, any fire alarm system in a big building, you need to identify each individual fire sensor. So this is the code for one specific sensor in the building. Now on the surface, thinking like builders and engineers, there's nothing wrong with this story so far. To design a fire alarm system, you have to be able to specifically locate where the fire is. Otherwise, you'll spend lots of time looking for it and the building burns down. But it's a character in the story because of the context, which often design or good design is really about the context. And the context where this unit of information showed up was in the security room at the cathedral. The security guards were the people who were supposed to monitor the fire alarm system. And on that day, on their little sensor, this code showed up. The problem was none of them knew what it meant. So unlike this gentleman in the front row who's very well informed, they were the equivalent, apparently, of the rest of you. They didn't really know what this meant. There was a second piece of information. Attic, nave, sacristy. Does anyone here know what a sacristy is? What's a sacristy? Yes. Anyone, just one person out of 200 or 300. Anyone else know? Just to gauge our relative index of expert knowledge compared to the fire alarm guy in the front row. A couple people know. So a sacristy, for you architecture or cathedral-minded people, it's a private room for the people who work at the cathedral. Attic, nave, sacristy, second piece of information. There's another problem. The building had 2 sacristies, and apparently the security guards did not know this. So on that day, sacristy is in the corner. The attic nave sacristy, which is where the fire was, is in the attic. And what happened, I'll give you a paraphrase, play-by-play, semi-fictionalized version of this. Fire alarm goes off, security guard is detached to go to the sacristy, since that's the code they understand. Goes to the sacristy, looks around, there's no fire, calls up the other security guard, says, hey, there's no fire here. And the person at the other end says, are you in the sacristy? He says, yes. Which sacristy are you in? There's more than one. This is the conversation effectively that was going on. So once they determined where the fire was and what the significance of that code was, they went upstairs to the attic. Hundreds of stairs to get up there. Time is going by. One way to think about design, we often get lost in all the mini attributes of what makes a design good or bad. Fire alarm should be very simple. The goal of a fire alarm is to shorten the amount of time between when the fire starts and it's detected. Shorten that amount of time. And the process I just described lengthened that time, longer and longer and longer. That is why it was a disaster, because the length of time was so long, by the time they identified where it was and were able to call the fire department, the building was already unrecoverable. Now, for design community, UX community, researchers, content strategists, people in this community, we're well aware of the many obvious mistakes to us that took place in this design. The obscure code, the fact that the security guards weren't trained how to read that code, confusion about the sacristy, how the training for these security... We can make a whole itemized list very quickly. All the problems that if we were hired, we would not... All the mistakes that if we were hired would not have been made. So we look at this, and stories like this, which come up every day in every community, they're often not as dramatic as burning down a historically important building, but we observe this around us because we are experts. And some of the things that we tend to say, they should know better than this. They should know better than this. Human factors has been a field around for now 70 years, 80 years. We should know better than this. How could this happen? Another common phrase that we hear in our communities, we discuss a lot, they don't get it. I'm in a meeting, I offer this idea that's obvious to me that it is good, they don't get it. The thrust of my message for you is that we are correct that there's important knowledge that they don't have. What I'm here to convince you of is that's probably never going to change. Designers and our knowledge, we are experts. That means we are in a minority in the intelligence of the world. We're hired because we know things other people don't know. But we tend to look at this as if it's a problem that someone else can solve. They should know better. So that to me is a kind of dogma. And design dogma has bothered me forever. We don't spend enough time questioning our assumptions about why the world is not designed better than it is. A lot of those assumptions are not about other people. It's about how we plan to use our expertise, how we evaluate the tools we're building and learning to be more effective at transferring the expertise that's in us out into the world where it can have value. Now, I am remiss as a storyteller and speaker when I have a word like dogma if I don't make some kind of joke out of it. So this is my dog Finn, pictured in here. Who said aw? Cute dog, right? I'm not biased at all on this. This is my dog. Pictured behind the dog is Finn's primary parent, his mom. It's my wife, Jill. So if you put this together, dog-ma. Dogma. Thank you, thank you. I'm here all afternoon. Okay, dogma. They should know better than this. Now, if you're practically minded, you might be right. You might work with coworkers who are ignorant, uninformed, self-involved, overly political. Whatever your complaint is about your environment might be true. And it's not really your fault. But if we think the world should be better and have more access or awareness of knowledge we possess, how is that going to happen? There's only one way it happens. It happens because we get better at teaching, leading, persuading, cajoling, whatever we have to figure out how to do to be effective. And this is where, in a talk like this, when I say there's work that we may have to do that we don't like to do or want to do, where I hear this phrase, it's a very common phrase, why should I have to? I'm going to ask all of you on the count of 3 to say this phrase. 1, 2, 3. Why should you have to? Why should you have to? And I'm here to tell you, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you're in an organization that's messed up and screwed up. You have a bad boss, bad client. That might be true. Might be true. So I'm not here to blame you and make you feel like it's all your fault. It's probably not. But if you have this goal, you have this ambition, you want a better world, you want more of your ideas to get out into the world, there's probably no one who can do this other than us, because no one else has this knowledge or expertise. So for me and my story, I really do want this. I want the design dream. I look at the world and all different layers of the world, all different systems and governments and tools, and why isn't it better? How do we make it better? I want a better civilization. And the last few years, civilization feels like it's been struggling. I think we have knowledge that can probably help. So this is what I want. I want every flavor of better design. But when I look at my own experiences, my own work experiences, projects, and I talk to people, I'm like, who is going to do this? It's going to come to us. So that's the should that I have. And Boone did a good job introducing me. I don't need to introduce myself. I've written a bunch of books, the last couple of books. Well, I could tell you one thing he didn't say. So my career started, I was a computer science student at Carnegie Mellon University. We have at least one Carnegie Mellon person here. Carol, where are you? Is Carol here? She's not here. I don't like Carnegie Mellon anymore. I renounced my alumni-ship of Carnegie Mellon. I was a computer science student, but I was a bad programmer. So I knew halfway through I was never going to make it as an engineer. And I struggled through the course catalog to justify the loans I had taken out to get through college. I found design. I found these classes in interaction design, user research, and I took them and I loved them. I got hired as a user researcher. So my first job out of college, I was a user researcher on Internet Explorer 1. That's how old I am. Early days of web browsing. I loved my job. I was grateful for it. I was using usability studies, ethnography, all this great stuff. But I got frustrated because I would do this research. I'd hand it to my project leader, who was smart and a nice person, and often they would reject my advice. And little by little, I started to think, why am I the advice giver? Why am I not the advice receiver and the decision maker? So after a year, I applied for that job, and I got it, and I loved it. I had technical background, so I could work with engineers, design background, I could push those agendas throughout the projects, and I had a fantastic, amazing career. But then I decided I was fortunate and lucky, and in my early 30s, I felt like, is this all I'm going to do is make software as amazing as it has been? And I decided I should take a risk. I should try to do something else with my professional life, so I quit to try to write books. And I didn't know I would work out. I didn't have a great writing experience, or I wasn't a journalism major or anything. But obviously, I'm here in front of you now because of my writing career. So for the last 20 years, mostly what I do is write books and talk about them and give workshops about them. And it took me a while to get back to wanting to write about design, but my last 2 books have been about design. The book that all of you got who are in the front row, free reward people in the front row, hold up your free book, yes. So that is a book I wrote trying to solve some of this problem. I'd been working as a UX person, but then I became a generalist manager. I had a lot of experience trying to explain design to people. I wanted to write a better, more modern book that you could give to anybody, to help them get it. That's what this book is. I wanted to try to succeed, design of everyday things, and Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think. I wanted to write a more modern, better, more effective version of that kind of a book. And that's what that is. But when I wrote that, I knew there was a different kind of book that I should try to write that's insider, that's for the UX community. It's for you folks, for designers and researchers and strategists. That's about what we should be doing differently. And that's the book I'm talking to you about today, Why Design is Hard. That's my opening spiel for you. I have 4 parts. They get faster and faster. So if you're getting bored and you're starting to think about the drink waiting for you, each time I hit a part, the speed's going to accelerate. So I want you to, this might not be true, but I'm anchoring you in that belief. And as psychology-minded people, it's going to work anyway. All right, talent versus effectiveness. Design history, design culture has some roots that are connected to the art history and art culture that places so much focus on talent. How creative are you? How talented are you? So I'm here to say to you, from the perspective of my goal for the world and my experience as a manager, talent is really not that important. Talent is only valuable if it can be converted into effectiveness, the effect that it has. Otherwise, what good is it? It hasn't made the world better. It hasn't made the product better. It hasn't made the service better. And I have 2 stories to share with you to drive this home. Because part of what we suffer from, it's a human failing, but design culture is so much more smaller than other professional cultures, it hurts us more, is hero culture. Hero culture. We lionize, romanticize versions of famous designers and want to embody that in our own work. But the truth is that most of those stories, the mythology, they're not true. So I'm going to give you 2 stories about this. The first is Paula Scher and what's often called the $1.5 million sketch. So how many of you, just by show of hands, how many of you have seen this sketch before? Okay, maybe a third of you. So this used to be a peak meme in design culture. It's decayed as memes do. But what this represents is Paula Scher, who is a worthy legend. If you have not heard her name before, look her up. She's a fantastic artist, like a creative artist, brilliant artist, but also an amazing designer, very successful and very pragmatic. The word pragmatic is very important to me, and Paula Scher seems very pragmatic. In the story, the company she worked for, Pentagram, was hired to redesign the logo for one of the biggest bank mergers in history, and she was on that team. And as the legend goes, she's in the room, a board meeting. They're starting to talk about merger stuff. That's how I, as a designer, refer to merger stuff, you know, nothing important going on there. But she's in the room as the story goes, and she makes a sketch thinking about the logo, makes a sketch quickly on a napkin and shows it. And as you can see, eventually that sketch became the logo for one of the biggest companies in the world. And as the legend goes, the not that useful legend, because it's not really entirely true, as the legend goes, that's what she was paid for. Pentagram was paid $10 million for the project, $1.5 million was for the logo. So as the legend goes, the mythology is creative people just flash of insight, make a thing, poof, magic. And it trivializes design to me. It trivializes the creative work to me for a couple of reasons. One, Paula Scher, even if the story were true, and she quickly did this, she had years and years of experience making logos, being in these conference rooms, talking to clients. So her decision to make this particular logo at this particular level of fidelity is based on all of that experience. So the 5-second, 10-second is like the tip of the iceberg. It discounts the knowledge and skill and wisdom required to decide to use to make this version of the sketch. The second reason why this is not that important comes from, or why this mythology version is not useful, comes from Paula herself. And Paula had this to say about the project. The design, it's never really the hard part. The hard part is persuading people to use it. To get either an individual, a group of people, or a corporation to be able to see, there were a million meetings trying to get buy-in. She's exaggerating here. I don't think there are quite a million meetings, although these were 2 very large companies, trying to get buy-in. So here, Paula Scher, the person who's famous for a $1.5 million sketch done quickly, is saying that the talent part, I mean, it's necessary, but it's not the hard part. Second story for you, Dieter Rams, probably the most famous living legend in the design world, the success of Apple, which the Apple style is rooted in the work that Dieter Rams did at Braun, is pictured here in a very common type of hero photo for creative people. Why do I say that? A couple of factors. One, he's standing alone. Now, any one of these products probably had dozens or hundreds of people who worked on them. Engineers who figured out difficult engineering, electrical problems, marketing and business analysts who came up with the budgeting and financing to make these things happen, countless numbers of specialists, just like we were specialists, were involved. But in a photo like this, who is shown? One person standing alone, the designer. It projects an idea that he is the mastermind, figured everything out, and he's so amazing he can just stand in an office with the products. Not true. But that is the relationship we tend to have to creative work. because most of our heroing of the roles that people play ends up looking like this. But Dieter Rams has a story to tell about his own experience. So when Dieter Rams was a younger designer, he worked at Braun. This is what he had to say about his time at Braun. When I started at Braun, there were difficulties between the designers and engineers. I noticed the engineers liked brandy, so I buy a good cognac to share. To be a good designer, you have to be half psychologist. Half psychologist. He's being metaphorical here. I wouldn't make an article saying 50% of your time. I'm not making that argument. But he is saying that a key reason for his early success in his career was because of his awareness and taking some responsibility for his relationship to people in other roles. This is Dieter Rams saying this. Now, he said it in an interview in the New York Times about 20 years ago. I had never heard of it before I started working on this book, trying to dig into the stories of our heroes and how they became successful. I'd never heard it before. Why? It's not a romantic hero creative art story. It doesn't get us excited. We want to get excited to think of this. This is the stereotype. I'm such a genius and I'm such an amazing thinker. I'm going to do it all myself and get all the credit. But he's saying it's not the case. Which leads us back to this. Can I get you on the count of three? 1, 2, 3. Why should you have to? I don't know that you should. A lot of us get into expert roles, the jobs that you have, the user research job I had, in part because I didn't love other people. Who wants to work in Photoshop or Figma all day? You're sitting at a screen with your own ideas. Who learns to sketch or to draw or to make music? These are mostly solitary pursuits. There's a stereotype, so it's not entirely true, but a lot of creative people are drawn to be creative because it's solitary, and they get to express themselves and be with themselves. Totally understandable. Totally understandable. But what Braun is saying is that his success, regardless of his talent, hinged on these relationships, hinged on being attuned to it and saying, I should do this. I should do it. Now, to jump back to our Citibank story, so a lot of this so far is opinionated. I'm trying to be anti-dogma. It's very specific. I do think that there's a wider lens. A lot of the talks I've seen today are organizational and thinking about service design, large organizations, and how do you plan, and I totally get that. Microsoft was a very large company. When I left it, and many of the companies that invite me in to speak are large organizations. I think there's something to be said for this idea. There's a maximum organizational idea velocity. Wherever you work, and you could take the best designer or whatever role you're in, the best person in the world, the most talented person, and put them in your job. There's some maximum velocity for what the organization can do. No matter how good you are, no matter how smart you are, the organizational velocity for how decisions get made and systems work could be a week if you're in a startup. If you're in a startup, it could be a day, it could be an afternoon. This is 3 people. In a mid-sized company, it could be a week, 6 months, a year. Government organizations or large system projects should be multiple years, but it's something we should all be aware of and thinking about. We teach younger designers that the ideas are what matters, but the idea can only get out the door depending on the velocity the organization can handle. So I'm going to ask you just to guess, and you can yell at me in this one instance. How long do you think it took for the Citibank logo, the sketch, to make it into a logo that was actually out in the world? How long? 1 year. 2 years. Guesses from the left, stage left? A month. Have you been to a bank? Take a month to get a check deposited. So the answer is 2 years. 2 years. Now, you have to think about this, right? In the idea world, the idea has supremacy. But in the practical world, anyone who's built a product or a project, it's all these little corner cases that you have to think through, and a bank is no different. To think of a logo design for a major corporation, how does it look on a billboard? How does it look on a credit card? How does it international? There's a lot of legwork to do. It's not the most exciting work, but it is creative work. And a lot of design or creative work is all those little details have to be sorted out, and that takes time. Sketch could be 5 seconds, but to make that actually something you can build could take a year or 10 years or more. The relationship between the idea and that path can be far apart. There's one important concept underneath all this that I want to make sure I talk about, which is the word designer itself. I know many of you may not have the word design in your job title, but we're in an event that's talking about UX design, so you can probably connect to that word. That word to me is very broad. You could be a researcher, a content strategist, an engineer. Part of your work is solving problems. That's a design-ish activity. So I mean this very broadly. But the word as it's taught to children, when we see the Dieter Rams photo, we think of a designer as the decider. They're making the decisions. Oh, I designed my own bedroom. Oh, that you would assume you designed where the show, you designed it. But in the world, designers are very rarely given that much authority and power. There's usually someone else who controls the budget, someone else who controls the schedule, someone else who controls hiring. You can make an argument that the most powerful design decisions on any project are the budget, the schedule, and hiring. If I cut your budget by half or by 90%, I am making a design decision. We just don't call it that, but it is. So I look at this differently. I say, I think designers, depending on your role, overlaps with being a decider. There's some things you get to decide, but a lot of the work and a lot of your ideas are going to have to go through a lot of other people and processes and systems to make it out into the world. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I just don't believe I know. We don't teach designers that way. We don't teach researchers that way. We don't teach people in creativity courses to think that way. We tend to teach them to expect to be like Dieter Rams. Now, the ultimate question here, why design is hard, I do have a research background, so I tried to do as much research as I could, but this is such a subjective, squishy problem, it was hard to find. So I went to the platform formerly known as Twitter. I did some user research here. How many user researchers are in the room? Okay, so you are probably already flagging, this is very biased data. Why? Because I tweeted about these topics all the time. Who follows me? People who agree with me. So it's like posting, hey, do you agree with me? Yes, look, the research says I'm right. But I couldn't find that many other sources of data, so take it for what you will. But the data says, I asked the question as best I could frame it in the short bandwidth of research quality you can get through Twitter. Understanding the problem, right? If you're a researcher, that's a good response. We like that because it is a kind of research. For 38%, we're probably proud of that number. But look at the second number, crafting the ideas. Most of design education, design books, design literature, design classes, it's all about crafting. Most methodology stuff, to me, is a kind of crafting. How are you going to compose and develop what to do? 4%. The lion's share is the answer to no surprise, 57.4%. So my thesis to you, if you don't remember anything else from my closing talk, is this. Can we make, it's not this, it's this. Okay, this doesn't work. It's this. Here we go. Can we treat this like a design problem? The argument I've made so far is for most of the history of design as a profession. For most of the history, we have externalized this. They should know better. They don't get it. They. We're waiting for someone else to figure it out for us. And I'm here to tell you that they won't. They probably can't. They don't know what to do. They don't have the insight, knowledge, and wisdom and expertise that you do. So I want to say this is part of what we have to own and take responsibility for. Even if we're going to say, you know what, I don't want to do that kind of work, but I recognize that's the reason why my ideas are not going anywhere. Then we're at least owning the reality of the landscape that we are working on. Which leads us to part 2. So the pace is going to pick up a little bit. Despite my equipment failure, the previous talk had a fake equipment failure. Like, that was a real one. Like, this thing doesn't work. I'll try it again later, and maybe it'll recover. I don't know. Part 2, the ego trap. Movie trivia here, literature, history trivia here. This is a character from a famous novel. It was a famous movie. Does anyone know what movie or novel this is from? The Fountainhead. Yes. Did anyone else know that? I feel like someone saw, we have a couple people. Okay, we have an Ayn Rand faction here, so be on the lookout. So, you're architects? Oh, okay. So, we'll see. Did you get a book? You did. Okay, so I bribed you already, because you may not like where this goes if you're an architect and you like Ayn Rand. So I may be in trouble with you. Luckily, I have the podium to hide behind. I can protect myself here. So the plot of this story, and I'm going to spoil it for you. I'll warn you right before I spoil it, but this has been out for like 80 years. So the statute of limitations on this story, especially if you're in the UX world, is over. But the plot here, Rourke, Thomas, I think, well, Rourke is Howard Rourke. Howard Rourke is his name. Young architect, very talented, but has supremely high ideals. So very picky about who he'll work with and how he wants to work. And he struggles and struggles and struggles. It's a really difficult time. Bunch of weird stuff happens because it's an Ayn Rand book, like weird political misogyny. There's weird stuff going on. That's not important to this story. Eventually, he gets a really big commission, like one of the biggest possible commissions you can get. It's a housing development for people who need lower income housing, basically. Huge project. He starts working on it. It's going okay. And then basically the landscape changes. And he's forced to make compromises to his ideas for the project. Like it's not going to be as pretty, it's not going to be as nice. And so what does he decide to do? Here is the spoiler part. If you really want to protect the sanctity of the story, cover your ears. What does he decide to do? He blows it up. He blows up basically a $1 billion project that would have helped lots of people. And he blows it up on the premise of his ideals. This project is beneath him, basically. I'm going to blow it up. Where it gets weirder is then there's a trial about this, and he's found not guilty for doing anything wrong. So that is the psychology behind, I call this the ego trap. It's a great exemplar of the ego trap. It's the belief that because you are a person who has an idea, that everything should be centered on you. And it is pervasive in design history, in part because it's pervasive in art history, but it's pervasive in design history. My idea is so valuable, it transcends all other requirements or expectations or anyone else's needs. And this may sound foreign to you. You all seem like very nice people. You've laughed at my jokes. You may not suffer from this at all as far as you know, but I do think that human nature is egocentric. We tend to think of ourselves first. There's a cognitive bias called the fundamental attribution error. We tend to look at ourselves more favorably than we look at everybody else. It's just in us. It's probably a survival instinct to do that to some degree. But I'm here to criticize us professionally. So I have a lot of experience being in rooms as a generalist where the designer comes in and talks about the design process, design methods. And there's something telling about how we refer to ourselves to other people, to other roles, to the project team. We tend to put ourselves in the center. UX is a center. This diagram in particular, I can't use this. Let's see if it works. It does work now. A miracle, a technological miracle has happened. I can now do my pointer stuff. I'm very excited about this. So UX is in the center. UX, the user experience. Where is the way the business works and how we get our money? The business case, well, here in the corner. Business analysis, oh, it's over here on the side. But UX, we are the center of the story. So you can go and look through a lot of the books you've read, design books, design topics, design presentations, and you will find who's in the middle? We are! And this is a little Howard Rourke to me, because we know we don't control the budgets, we don't set the schedules, we didn't found the company. We do all kinds of things that need to be in place before we can do our work. We tend to discount them. We tend to be ignorant of them, we tend to ignore them. And I think it rubs other people the wrong way. I used to be a methodology person. I would give those methodology presentations. Here's the double diamond, the triple diamond, the quadruple diamond. Here's the way we're going to do it on one foot. We have a long history of using methodology warfare, of trying to convince people to work differently in our favor by saying we control the method. And to me, what this is, translated in a very gross and crude way, is look at me! Look at me! I want more! My advice is, thinking of effectiveness, it could be true that you deserve more attention. It could be true you deserve more resources. It could be true you're in a dysfunctional organization with a psychopathic, narcissistic executive or VP or whoever. That could all be true. I don't want you to leave this talk feeling like I'm blaming you. Your situation could be unfair and broken. I would totally give you that. But this is not very effective. What's more effective, instead of talking about your methods or your this. I see you, I see what's going on for you, I get your problem, and I can fix it for you. Now, someone who says this is going to get questions about, well, how? Why? How? And then maybe you can start to talk about, well, here's how we're going to work for me to solve your problem. But this on its own, it's like going to a mechanic and they're telling you about the difference between a 6-cylinder, like it's inside knowledge that most people most of the time don't need to know. They need to know that they can trust you, they need to know you understand their problem, and they need to know you can help. And if you can convince them of those things, everything else we complain about tends to go away because they feel like you're making their job easier. So we have a series of flawed assumptions. I've called it a bunch of them here. The one I want to talk about the most is the 4 Ps from MBA. The 4 Ps. Does anyone here know? Do we have any MBA or business school graduates, people who studied business school? I did. Yes. So whoever said 4 Ps, you know what the 4 Ps are? Who yelled out something? You did? 4 Ps. Now they're very quiet. Oh, well. See, but look. I'm talking about effectiveness now, right? You could have just yelled them out, and I would have been so happy. I would have been so happy. Now, I'm like, well, too honest. So the 4 Ps. I can't play the game with you. I'll just talk about the 4 Ps. So the 4 Ps, product, price, promotion, and positioning. I learned this late. I became a general manager, like a project lead person, so I was managing leading engineers and designers and testers and marketers. And I didn't go to business school. I had some business sense, but I felt like I needed to learn more context because I did work with business analysts and executives. So I read a book called The 10-Day MBA. It used to be popular. There's probably some things accelerate, right? There's probably like a 2-day MBA now or like a 20-minute MBA. I don't know. I'm too old to know. But I did know that from that book, this thing changed my mind the most about user experience and design, the profession, for this simple reason. So product, price, promotion, and positioning. I was trained through my UX training that fight for the user, make the quality better. That's the primacy. That's the most important thing. If you make quality better, customer satisfaction better, everybody wins by default. That's a very egocentric view of how not even just businesses, but organizations function. Price might be the most important factor for why a product is successful or not. And we know this in our everyday lives. When you decide to buy a car or move to a new apartment or get some gadget, price is going to be the thing you're going to look at first. Can I afford it? If you can't afford it, it doesn't matter how well the product is designed. Price you can't afford means usability is 0. It is 0. But I didn't think this way. I would go into arguments with business analysts with that kind of self-righteous user supremacy argument. And then I realized later I lose these arguments because I was ignoring how important for a particular product or a particular strategy, price was the most important thing. People make decisions about products on price first. Now sometimes we give so much attention in design circles to Apple. But Apple was in a product market where price became a very different factor. They needed to differentiate themselves from the Dells and the other similar products that already existed. It was a commoditized market. So raising product quality was a way to differentiate. But often in most consumer places, most consumer business models, price is the way to differentiate. If you can be cheaper, you get more access. Third is promotion. So let's say we came up with an idealized solution, a great product at the right price, and the business manager and the design team that you folks are on are happy. Promotion. Now promotion is what typically we call marketing. Promotion is how does anybody even know your product exists? So if you have a product at the right price, best design, but no one knows it exists, how are we helping the world? You're not. So you need promotion and price. And then positioning is the one that's kind of a killer. It kind of makes us very sad sometimes. Because positioning is just who's your product partnered with. We know about upsells and add-ons and when you package products together, bundling. We buy a thing, oh, the 6 things, they're great, I'll buy that. Is it bundled? Is it bundled with the right partner? So you can have a business strategist or someone thinking from that lens who sees the play for this product in this part of our organization is a positioning play. That means the way you're going to win or get market share is from positioning, which means that the product investment may have no effect on the business. There are many businesses that work that way. Not all, and some of them still can benefit from a better product, but the key strategy, understandably, is often about price or promotion or positioning. That's just the way the world works. Bad design is common for these reasons. The business just doesn't afford it. It doesn't make sense. But this is not how designers are taught. The books I mentioned, Design of Everyday Things, Don't Make Me Think, whatever your favorite design book is, I almost guarantee you it doesn't talk about how bad design makes complete sense in many business cases. Not all, but some. It's up to us to be proficient in understanding why we're getting so much resistance. It might have nothing to do with you or your skills or your talent. It could be that the current strategy of your current place you are in your organization, design is just not the most important thing. So it's not personal. But we have to admit this is possible. 4 Ps. All right. I feel like I've depressed you a bit. I have a few minutes left. Try to solve your life now. I'm going to raise the stakes from design to your life. So I think this is actually true about life, but it's specifically true. 3 choices in life if you have ideas. So I'm going to footnote it with that. I'm going to make it a little smaller. If you have ideas. If you have ideas, you want them to go somewhere, and you're not getting them to go where you want, you probably need more power. That decider, designer, Venn diagram, you probably need more power. I'm biased, of course, here. You can call me out for being biased here. I switched from being a UX expert to being a generalist decision maker. So that's what I did. But I think it's universally true. You will need more power. If you have the power, you don't have to persuade anybody anymore because you're making the decision. That's choice A. Now, you can say for choice A, you don't want more power. Power is responsibility and stressful meetings. You don't want that. Totally fine. Totally fine. If you don't want more power, you have to go with B. I have to learn to be better at influencing the people who have power. Why? That's the vector where ideas will go. If I can convince the boss to fund this or approve this, great. But it's going to be the effectiveness of convincing them that will be the determining factor whether my idea goes out the door or not. Influence. You can also say, Scott, I don't like people. Influencing means talking to people more. I don't want to do that. I'll tell you, fine. I totally get it. A lot of people I don't like either. I also say, and the book goes into more detail on this, there are ways as an introvert to be influential. You don't have to be a talker or a loud person. There are ways to be influential if you see that as the path that you need to be on. Writing and communicating there are ways to use the skills you have as an introvert if they're focused creatively in this way. And then the last option, which I think is a very healthy one for everybody, is to recognize, okay, you don't want to be an influencer either. You don't want power, you don't want to be an influencer. You have to accept the limitations of how far your ideas are likely to go. Just because of the way ideas work. Ideas work, they flow through systems of people. So if you're not going to get more power and you're not going to be more influential, you have to hope you have a good boss or a good coworker that's going to do some of that influencing for you. And good design managers and good leaders are like that. And there are some out there. There are many out there. But then you're dependent on landing an organization or a team that's doing some of that work for you, which is fine. You could also say, you know what, I like my ideas. I like being in Photoshop and Figma and working with my ideas. I care less about my ideas affecting the world or affecting the customer. You can enjoy the work you do and the influence you have and accept it. That's totally fine. What I think is a dangerous problem that's rampant in design culture is playing it both ways. They should change. They suck. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to keep doing exactly what I've done and be angry about it. I'm going to be angry about it. It's not healthy. It's not self-aware. It's not self-respectful either. It's hoping that the world will change without making any effort to try to either change your perspective on it or the actions that you take in it. I want to close by talking about your superpowers. The thing I flipped through to pick up the pace for you is about situations. And I've offered a few situations that have come up. I think we do need to focus on teaching people to learn how to deal with the situations we complain about. Being ignored, not getting a seat at the table, having decisions made without you. These are common complaints I have heard over and over again, and they are frustrating. But we should be teaching these things as normal. It's likely you will have decisions made without you. It's likely people will not know what you do because you're an expert. We should normalize those situations and learn how to be better at them. And the way you do that is, I'm going to tell you as my last part, is knowing your powers, knowing your superpowers. Things you are already good at are probably depressed you enough, made you feel bad enough about design and the prospect for ideas and creativity in the world. You are powerful people. That's part of why I still do this work. You are powerful people. You have skills and perceptions and contexts for what needs to happen in the world and in your organization that is really very important. But there are ways to use those skills to make them more leveraged, to make them more valuable, and that's what I want to do for the last couple of minutes. There's a book that I read while I was doing research called Designing Your Life by Burnett and Evans, and they talk about gravity problems. Gravity problems. Gravity problem is a circumstance you cannot or are unwilling to change, making it inactionable and not a solvable problem, but a fact to be accepted. A gravity problem. It's called a gravity problem because you could look at gravity as terribly frustrating. Slows you down. As you get older, like I am, stuff starts to sag in unpleasant ways. Gravity kind of sucks. But if you went for a walk and you saw a good friend you hadn't seen in a while, and you ran into them, hey, how you doing? And they were like, oh, I'm terrible. And they seem really sad. Oh, what's wrong? Oh, I don't want to talk about it. It's so bad. And you go, no, really, you can tell me. And they go, I'm upset about gravity. You'd be like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And you might be able to have an intellectual conversation about the downsides of gravity, but we have accepted it as a fundamental truth as far as we understand how physics works. We have gravity. So to spend time focusing about something you can't change, it's just not a healthy attitude to have. And the book says it's good to fight battles. It's good to have ideals and fight for them. Definitely good. This is not a suggestion to give up, but it's to recognize when you're dealing with forces that are so big and so large that you as an individual are not likely to influence them that much. It's a gravity problem. And what I've called out, some of these situations and dynamics I talked about, they're gravity problems. The 4 Ps, it's kind of a gravity problem. We wish good design mattered all the time. It doesn't. It sucks if you care about design. Gravity problem. I'm not going to fix that. You're not going to fix that. So instead, to focus on the things where you have leverage and to frame your attitude and experience with gravity problems in a healthier way. So your superpowers. Your superpowers. They're all about pragmatic idealism to me. I love idealistic people. I love people who have big ideas and big dreams. But if you want to be effective and influence the world, there has to be this kicker of a word, pragmatic, around it. Channeling that idealism in some way has some percentage chance of having an influence on making the world different, as opposed to having idealism that's targeted in a corner where it can't affect anything. So a lot of the situations I've talked about, I want to give you some reframing to leave you with, to take home with you. Instead of talking about design or your expertise, this is good advice for any expert. Any expert. All experts fall victim to this. Any expert. Instead of talking about your work, my method is this, my background is this, I read this research, to show up and say, hey, I heard you say in that meeting X is the most important thing. I can fix that for you. I need this from you to do it. That's a conversation that will get you attention from all the people who are ignoring you. I'm not saying you have to do magically different work. This is just the way you frame it. And as designers and UX people, framing is what we do, reframing. How do I discuss this or look at this in a way that is the most value? This is one reframing. And when I was a team leader person, this is what I wanted to hear from anybody on my team. There were marketers, there were accessibility people, there were engineers, there were business people. I'm the person who has to sort it all out. I want them coming to say, I see the goals we're after, here's how I can help. Or I see the goal you're after, it's wrong, I can convince you why this goal should be. Great. They're working at a level above their expertise. That's how your executive and your VP is operating. They don't need to know the background unless you can help. Then the other one is this. Reporting on your work in a similar context. Frame it for the person you're talking to so it makes sense to them. Hi, executive. This team, it's not about me. A team that has resources and budget, they were working on this, I helped them, it got better in this way. You have to do the work for that. I'm not saying make it up. But then, if there's any question about your value, Team X is on your side. You already did it with them. They feel good about having you around. They want you involved more. The VP will say, how do we repeat this? And what do you need, money, hiring to repeat this elsewhere? That's the story you want to tell. Reframing. And what does this require? What skills? Your superpowers. This is creative thinking. This is kind of curiosity and investigation into understanding how things work and how to tell this kind of story, what work would you need to do. So the 3 superpowers I want to leave you with that you already have. One is curiosity. All the fields that come to events like this, you are curious people. Like you read books, and like God bless you as an author for like reading books. You do, because you're curious. You want to know, why did this happen? Why did it work this way? You're curious people. Unfortunately, a lot of people in this era are not that curious. Your curiosity is a superpower. Anything that frustrates you, if I touched on anything, you're like, oh, that happened to me last week. Don't be judgmental about it. This is a Ted Lasso reference. Don't be judgmental about it. Be curious about it. What went on in that person's mind they made this decision? What don't I see? What was I missing that led to this frustrating thing? Be curious. Use your curiosity about the things that frustrate you. Then it becomes an asset, and you'll get around the corner, and you'll be able to reframe it. 2 is negotiation. As a designer or creative person in any sense, part of what you do in creative work is negotiate with yourself about your own ideas. That's what it is to brainstorm. That's what it is to come up with a prototype. In your own mind, well, I could do it this way with this wireframe. What if I did it this way? What if I could take this? You do it with yourself. That is what creativity is, a conversation with yourself with competing ideas in tension, and you're trying to release the tension. It's negotiation. I am convinced of this. All creative people have the capacity to negotiate ideas. It's just an internal process. In any situation where you're on a team project, there's always a need for people who are better at negotiating, for being able to say, when you say this, did you mean that? Making a conversation something where people can compare ideas against each other. And you are well suited to do this. It is social, so if you don't prefer social engagement, it's a little harder to find ways to exercise this, but pay attention in rooms for how you can use that. I know how to compare ideas. These 2 people are arguing in a stupid way, comparing ideas. I can help them. I can help them sort that out. Then 3rd is explaining. Last one, explaining. We live, despite all the cool technology that keeps getting invented, we live in a heavy textual age. Incredibly heavy text. It's kind of a throwback. You know, hieroglyphics was this great thing, pictures, then we went to text, now we're back to emojis. It's very weird, circular. Some of the innovation works in circular, weird ways. But like Slack to me, or Teams, text, the business world, engineering world, it's text, waves, paragraphs. Now we have ChatGPT making volumes even more of like trashy text. Our brains, for the cognitive psychology people here, our brains are better at images. Much better. We process images faster, they're more powerful. And who, in an organization of 1,000 people, who is best suited to make visual representations to explain confusing or contentious things? It's you folks. It's designers. It's people who spend time thinking about how to visualize things. So I had one example that I already shared with you. So I'm going to self-refer here. You know, I showed this thing of designers, that Venn diagram, designers and deciders. In text, designing and deciding are not the same, but there is sometimes an overlap between these activities. Like your brain is tuning out. It's like, oh, what am I? Your brain is trying to, but the image for that is like, boom. The Venn diagrams are amazing. You know, like we should have an annual party for Mr. Venn for creating these diagrams. You know, he was actually a person. It's like be curious about that. If nothing else, be curious about Mr. Venn. But the choice to do that in a conversation, in a meeting, in a contentious meeting, where people are arguing about stuff, or you're reading a spec or a proposal, and it's like really just, how would you draw it? And share that to your Slack channel. Even if what you share isn't accurate, by making people's brains kick into a visual gear, you are making the conversation better. When we used to meet in the same room with people and have whiteboards, this was something I learned as a trick. If I'm in a contentious meeting, is it this? Is it this? I go to the whiteboard and I say, do you mean this? And by going and making it visual, even if everyone in the room is like, no, that's totally wrong. What do? They grab a marker and they draw something else. And now we've transformed from the abstraction of language and argument into what is the thing. That ability to make things visual is something all of you have. Even if you're not strictly a designer, the fact you'd come to an event like this means you are good, better than average at thinking visually. And you can do this at any moment, in any meeting, in any conversation, any Slack thread, any Teams thread. You can decide to say, does this help us understand what we're disagreeing about? And I guarantee you, even by asking that question, you are doing a facilitation move of going meta. You're helping people get abstract in a healthy way to think about what's going on. So the last example, we're in a current hype cycle around AI. The text for that, the Gartner hype cycle, is a graphical presentation to represent the maturity, adoption, so like your brain is like, what does this even mean? But then you look at a diagram of it, you're like, oh, it's a hype cycle. Okay, fast. You all have that power. And these little things may seem trivial, given whatever situation you're in, your frustration. It may seem trivial, but these little things against gravity problems are big wins. That's how you start to have people say about you, you know what, I don't know why, but I like when Mary is in the room. Somehow conversations seem to go better. And what's the reason why? Because you're curious, because you help negotiate, because you're good at explaining things visually. People just want you around. That's how you get to seat at the table, when people feel like you're valuable there. Not because you're knocking on the door, yelling about fighting for the user and saying, I should be in that room. You want them to feel like you're valuable and have you come in. So my closing thought for you, I know I'm a little bit over time. For the last time, last one, 1, 2, 3, can you say, why should you have to? Again, maybe you shouldn't. It's really up to you to decide how you want to spend your time in your life. I care about making the world a better place. That's why I should do this. But it's up to you to figure out what you should do. So that's my last slide for you. Thank you. Those are my 4 major points. And I will be around in the happy hour if you want to assault me for the Ayn Rand fans here. But thank you for listening, and I'll see you at happy hour. Yeah, thank you.